Hey everybody, Mr. Troy here. I've got a quick but very important video on why we've been factoring in the first place. Here we go. It's time for math with Mr. Troy. Okay, so we're going to look at something that has already been factored. 0 equals x minus 4 times x plus 2. So this is the sort of thing you would do if you took an equation and you factored it. And it says, what values of x make this true? Well, we have a property in math called the zero product property. The zero product property tells us that if two quantities multiply to 0, one has to be 0. All right, what does that mean? Well, let's start with something that makes sense to you. If you multiply 3 times x and you get 0, the only way that could possibly work is if x was 0. But it goes a step further. If you multiplied a times b and got 0, either a or b, or both, would have to be 0. So, what's the point of that? Well, if I'm looking at this equation, I can say either x minus 4 equals 0 or x plus 2 equals 0. The only way that this equation is going to be true is if I have 0 equals 0 times x plus 2, or 0 equals x minus 4 times 0. Which is to say, if I plugged in 4 here, I would have 0 times 6. Now, 0 times 6 does equal 0, which would make the equation true. If instead I plugged in negative 2, I would have negative 6 times 0. And that does equal 0, and then the equation would be true. So that's the basic principle of solving by factoring. So let's take a look at these equations, and we'll see that factoring is actually the easiest way to go about solving these. So what you do is you get the equation equal to 0 on one side, and then you factor the right side. So remember that this means we need two things that multiply to make 8 and add to make 6. We say, okay, if I did x plus 2 times x plus 4, those multiply to make 8 and add to make 6. My lasts multiply to make 8, and my outers and my inners add to make 6x. So, what are the solutions to the equation? Well, either x plus 2 equals 0 and x equals negative 2, or x plus 4 equals 0 and x equals negative 4. So what that means is if you plug in negative 2 to the original equation, the equation will be true. Let's see that. 0 equals negative 2 squared, that's 4, plus 6 times negative 2, got ahead of myself there, plus 6 times negative 2, that's negative 12, plus 8, 4 minus 12 plus 8, that does equal 0. So that shows that this is a solution. For the next one here, we're going to do the same thing, except the factoring is going to be a little bit different. So this is what multiplies to 8 but adds to make 9. Well, 8 times 1 makes 8, and 8 plus 1 makes 9. So our solutions come from splitting this apart. Either I make x plus 8 equals 0, or I make x plus 1 equals 0. So my two possible solutions are x equals -8 or x equals -1. So you'll have some Khan Academy problems that look like this. I want to remind you some things about factoring. So if you see all pluses in your equation, that has to factor to x plus and x plus. So what multiplies to make 27 and adds to make 12? Well, things that multiply to make 27 are 1 and 27 and 3 and 9. Do any of those add to make 12? Sure, 3 and 9. So x plus 3, x plus 9. But those aren't the answers. The answers come from solving. How can I make x plus 3 equal to 0 if x equals -3? How can I make x plus 9 equal to 0 if x equals -9? So the smaller x value is -9, and the larger x value is -3. Okay, pause the video and give this problem to the right a try. Okay, hopefully you paused, you tried it, and then you came back. Remember, if you see a negative here, that's a sign that you have x plus something and x minus something, because you want the lasts to multiply to make a negative number. Well, what things multiply to make 14? Either 1 and 14 or 2 and 7. Is there any way I can combine those numbers, either by adding or subtracting, because I've got a plus or a minus here, to make -5? Well, if I use x plus 2 and x minus 7, those outers and those inners would add to make -5. Now here's the trick. That doesn't mean that 2 is your answer. It means that -2 is your answer. And it doesn't mean that -7 is your answer. It means that +7 is your answer. Some of the problems you'll see have just one answer blank, and that's because when you factor them, they factor to the same thing twice. This is called a perfect square trinomial, and it has what's called a repeated solution. So the only answer we would get out of this would be x equals -3. Just one solution for that one. All right, I hope that's helpful. Quick video. There's a Khan Academy that you'll see on that, which will be due sometime next week. Cool. See you.